Okay, everybody. We apologize for that. That was the first time that's ever happened to us. But again, this is Tom Stimulus with True North Group, and we're going to do our Tuesday Facebook Live for cybersecurity. And the topic today is debit card versus credit card and the risks that as a small business owner or as a business owner that you have using a debit card instead of a credit card. So first thing that we talked about was that cash flow. And as a small business, it's important that we manage our cash flow effectively. And when you use a debit card, when you make a charge, it is automatically drawn out of your account. And if you have good financial practices, then from a cash flow management perspective, it would be better to use the bank's money and then make that payment at the end of the month. Now, a lot of people will talk about, well, if I don't make my payment on time, I get charged with a service fee, which is true. But the credit cards, and pretty much every credit card that I've seen, and I'm using it for my own, is that you can actually set it up where every month on the due date, a couple days before the due date, they will automatically withdraw from your bank the minimum balance due for that month. So it's impossible now to actually miss a payment. Now there is the fact that you could pay some interest if you don't pay it off every month. That's understandable. That's also a conversation for you and your accountant about how that interest is reflected on your books. But remember, if you aren't managing your bank account effectively, you can buy a $4 or $5 cup of coffee from Starbucks. If you don't have that money available, they're going to hit you with a $35 overdraft charge. So a $5 cup of coffee is going to cost you $40. So that's something to keep in mind, that there's benefits and negatives, but from a cash flow perspective, you might want to look at using your credit card. The other one we talked about is fraud protection. I mentioned that a personal debit card does get fraud protection if you report to your bank within 48 hours. If you don't, if you're someone that doesn't follow your transactions as readily, there is a possibility that your financial institution may not reimburse you for a fraudulent charge. Businesses don't get that same level of protection. They fall under a different category in that financial documentation in the law, and they don't get the same fraud protection that you do from personal. So the bank or your financial institution does not have to reimburse you for a fraudulent charge if your card's stolen or misused. So with a credit card, we all know that if someone steals my credit card and they spend $1,000, $10,000, I have no financial requirement. They'll tell you, by law, it's $50, but you know what? They don't even go after that. It's really the bank or the financial card issuer's responsibility to chase that those fraudulent charges. So again, a really good reason to not use a debit card is that fraud protection. Now, purchase disputes. We've all made a purchase that seemed too good to be true, or maybe with a less than reputable organization, and it didn't work out correctly. And you would call your bank, American Express, whatever. You say, hey, I'm disputing this. I tried to get a refund. I tried to return the product, whatever it is. And then American Express runs with it, and they do all the legwork. With a debit card, you don't get that purchase dispute. So that's enough, you have to do it. And there's a possibility that you're not going to get that money returned, because you're the one that first of all, has to spend the time disputing it with the vendor and then trying to get that money returned. And it doesn't necessarily mean you will. But if you've ever disputed a legitimate purchase, or I'm sorry, a legitimate issue with a purchase, your credit card organization will normally reimburse that and not hold you accountable for it. So another great reason to use a credit card instead of a debit. Another one is debit cards don't give you any rewards. So there's American Express that does actual cash back. A lot of credit cards do cash back. If you're an organization that does a lot of travel, you could use points. So all of the major carriers have point and reward systems, which allow you to eventually, get free tickets or get free points for purchases. You don't get that with debit cards. So why would you continue to use a debit card for purchases when there are incentives from card issuers to actually have you spend? You're still spending the same amount. You're just not getting any additional value from your debit card. Another one is, just like with personal credit, businesses need to build credit. Because, if you ever decide that you need to go for a loan or a line of credit, so that you can expand or scale or grow, you need to have good credit. Debit card usage does not impact your business credit score. So again, if you're wanting to build solid credit for your organization because you want to be able to expand, another reason, don't use your credit card. Or your debit card. You want to use a credit card. A couple of little, just a few more things here. One is the phantom charges. So if you've ever been to a hotel or a rent-a-car organization, they will put a hold or they'll put a phantom charge on your credit card with the intent of billing you in full upon your stay completion or you return the card. Debit cards, they put a hold on funds, and that can be anywhere from $100 to $300 or more. And they will hold those funds. So if you have $500 in your account and they put a $300 hold and you go spend $250, guess what? You're overdraft and they're going to nail you with a fee, because that money is not accessible by you, because the hotel or the rental organization has that money on hold, and the bank does that because it's a guarantee that you're going to pay your debt upon completion of your stay or your use of the rental card. We talked about overdrafts already. You can't overdraft on a credit card, right? You can exceed your limit, but that limit is set by you and the issuer, and you kind of know what that limit is. Unless you're keeping really good records with your debit card and marking out every time you have a fee or a cost, you kind of have to leave a buffer of maybe $500 or $1,000 in your bank account so that you don't get hit with those overdraft charges. So if you're going to have $1,000 in your bank account because you don't balance your books every day, or you don't keep meticulous records like you did when we had an ATM card or a checking account, every time you wrote a check, you marked it in, you knew what your running balance was. It's a lot harder when you have that card that you're purchasing online and in person, and you may have several debit cards tied to your account. It's very difficult to track that. So in essence, it's probably a better idea to put the responsibility on the credit card issue as opposed to yourself. And then the last one from a security perspective is I want to talk about skimming. If you use your credit cards, if you've ever been to those ATMs that are outside of a store, or you've ever been to these random gas stations on these side roads, you have to be cautious, because that's where criminals put skimming devices. And basically what a skimming device is it is placed over the actual credit card area where you're going to put your credit card into to validate your information so you can get gas. What that does is it skims the information, your credit card information, your PIN, all of that information, and then they use that to make purchases against your card. If that happens with a credit card, it goes back to a fraudulent purchase, and then the card issuer is responsible for tracking it down. If it's on your debit card, you're responsible. And then you have to negotiate with your financial institution or your bank to get those fraudulent charges back. And like I said, you don't get fraudulent charge protection for a business card. And then even if you use a personal card, you have to notify that bank within 48 hours that there was a fraudulent charge. So if you think about it from a business perspective, it's better for you to consider using a credit card for a majority of your purchases. I do not have a business debit card. I have a business ATM card. All right. It does not have a chip on it. It can only be used by me to withdraw money from an ATM if I need cash as related to my business. And it was interesting because they wanted me to get a debit card. So that's the last question that you have to ask. Why does a bank want you to use a debit card? All right. Do you think it's for philanthropical reasons because they really want you to grow your business? Or do you think it's because they make money off of a debit card, all right? They make money on the use of these debit cards. Every transaction that's done, they get a certain percentage. So it's in their best interest for their business to have people use debit cards instead of credit cards. So with that, I think that's enough to talk about for today. It really is important to look at it from a security perspective, but also an effective management task when you're looking at your business as a whole. So I hope you learned something today. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you next week for our next Facebook Live. Have a great day, everybody.